not sure if anybody can hear this. Okay, now I can see audio levels. All right, so in case the audio from before wasn't being recorded, which it doesn't seem like it was, today is a bit of a departure for me from a variety of aspects. First off, I am an Apple II guy, or an Apple guy in general. If it has an Apple logo on it, I can usually tell you a little bit about it. This, on the other hand, is definitely not an Apple computer, though it was probably contemporary with the Apple II. It's a homebrew machine built by someone named Bruce, and his initials were BDC, and he called it the BDC 6500 computer. At the estate sale, they thought perhaps it was a stereo receiver. And you can understand why. Looking at the back, it does look like it has some audio functionality to it. The only remaining label on here is +12, so I'm wondering if this is power supply. +12, maybe 5 volts ground, and then something else for external bits. There's audio, looks like in and out, some kind of BNC connector there. I wonder if that's network or something else. A hole or two drilled in it for other things that were either removed or moved around. It looks like a serial interface, and a couple of cables coming out that look like they might be parallel. Part of what intrigues me about this in particular is that the owner of this was involved in the creation of another machine later on called the MTU-130, and I'm curious if this connector, which looks like it might be a parallel connector or a serial connector, has some function in either prototyping or building that other machine, and if so, what the other bits and pieces inside of this guy might have to do with that. So that MTU-130 cord splits out into a couple of different connectors, obviously hand wired. So my guess is for prototyping purposes or for transferring data to and from. This bit of spaghetti mess here is the highly technical power cord taken from like a Home Depot variety extension cord. This glorious mess here is how the MTU-130 cable gets in and out of the box itself. And this other cable is labeled printer. So a parallel port printer, some variety. Looks like 16 pin or 20 pin there. Also on the back here, you can see some fuses and a very large fan. That fan is probably going to dim the lights if I ever fire it up. Inside the case, I found this very desiccated Post-it note. It has some notes about memory locations, and yeah, this is definitely vintage Post-it note because they don't turn that color overnight. Whilst I was looking around inside the case, I also found this, which at first I thought was some kind of a weird homemade. I thought it might have been a probe for an oscilloscope or a logic probe. just using the tip for using probe on conductive stuff. However, after doing a bit of research on the MTU-130, just based on the name here, that is fiber optic. And this is a fiber optic light pen made from a Pilot ultrafine point pen, which I think is kind of hilarious. But another clue that it has something to do with the 130, because the 130 did have the functionality of an optic light pen. If anybody's actually watching, please chime in, and I believe there is a Q&A that you can post on if you have anything that is just keeping you up at night. So I'll explain my setup here. I was going to go and do all this. I made some room in my office, my usual environment, to take this apart, but decided to do it here in our living room, where there's not only a little bit more room, but also where I could get all the way around. And plus, I get to use the world's ugliest blanket to protect the glass on our coffee table. So getting the wires straightened out. Get the machine itself removed from its casing. It's kind of a strange drawer-like apparatus. It sort of pushes in the back and pushes out the front. Now we'll take the wooden cabinet off. Oof, worse than I thought. Because it is just that big wooden cabinet. It's like inch-thick walnut or something. See that inside there? It's pretty well insulated thermally, so no wonder he was going to have trouble and keep this big ass fan in it. So I will show you what I can see. So as you can see, it is a Commodore MOS KIM-1, and not sure if that's a date code, 2677, might be 1977 date code. This chip here is the 6530. And it's on a socket. Here is the 6502, and then there is another 6530 there. And of course, I'm getting a phone call, so that's just perfect timing. All right, do not disturb mode. So, continuing the tour, for all zero viewers once again, this is a 6502 computer kit, originally by MOS, and when MOS was absorbed into Commodore, they co-branded it and continue to sell it. So it's a little bit later. I think the first ones just say MOS on them. And this would have probably come as a kit of parts and was hand soldered. So you got the input here, the display, and that was pretty much it for the kit. All the rest of it required expansion and other things be purchased. And it looks like that's what has happened here. So back in the back here, got a big set of transformers, and that does look like it goes out to these power ports here on the back. So it looks like that is what those are doing. Regulators, transformers. So yeah, that's probably taking that, as I suspected, plus 12 volts, plus 5 volts ground, and the other one minus 5. So that's going to be hooking up peripherals. They'll be powered from this pretty impressive power supply here. Again, wired directly in to mains from an extension cord, Home Depot. So down there, we've got AC coming in. So the AC is coming in here. And it splits over to this little board here. And then you've got all kinds of stuff sort of nailed down to the base plate. But what I want to try and do is track down where this rainbow cable comes in, this interface cable that went out to the MTU 130. And it looks like it's going into whatever this board is down here that is connected to the back plane. So looking down here into the side, it looks like, well, there's some more cable goodness. It's an RCA style cable. There's like a composite either video or audio cable plugged into like a BNC style coax. And there's a couple of other labels that have fallen off down in there. So, looks like I've got a couple of people actually viewing. So, if you can see or hear me, and you're interested, go ahead and ask some questions. Maybe you're just looky-loos, I don't know. So I'm going to try and take this first CPU board out. Looks like it's on a drawer here, but it may require some further disassembly. So In the front of the machine, there were these two switches that controlled the spool and compress functions. So it sounds to me like a tape interface was at least attached, if not built in somehow. And that is connected to there's a couple of breadboards just kind of floating in here without any kind of mounting. There's this blue breadboard that seems to get power from over here. And there's a couple of sockets for what may or may not be this. There we go. That goes directly to what looks like this serial port here on the back, or whatever it is. So that goes straight into this blue board, and there's a couple of sockets here. One of them actually feels like it's loose. Take that off, see what I can see. There. I'm getting a great shot of my armpit right now. And so yeah, there's that blue board. Like I said, it's just kind of popped on top of these mounting screws here. Try not to force things too much. Okay, that's going to require a tool to remove it. So let's just look underneath. Okay, so this is a little wire wrap board. Taking this 9, 10, 11, 12, 24 pin connector here, and breaking it out to this little 16 pin connector here, and another one here, and another 24 there. So I'm wondering if this has some functionality for adding an extra ROM or something in there, or for reading and connecting things externally to another, maybe a chip reader or a ROM burner or something like that. And he's given himself a breadboard here to work with. There's nothing plugged into it right now except for what looks like just power and ground. So there is, in addition to the CPU board, it has the 6502 on it. Let's see if I can see there. There is one. Actually, get in there here. One board in the back, 2, and 3. And that bottom one looks to be wire wrapped as opposed to printed board, and it looks like it has a couple of audio ports on it, which again makes me think that this had something to do with the music or video capabilities. Of course, that board above it looks very similar. It looks like a production board. It has a, maybe it's a video interface. Maybe that's what that is, composite video out. Anyhow, this looks to be a RAM board. Yeah, it is an MTU 16K memory. And it's kind of hard, again, to see in situ. I'll get it out and take a look at some point. And that board seems to just be in the slot and not mounted on screws, but the CPU board is. So let's see what I can see. Yeah, I've only got a limited time before I need to call it a day, but I thought I'd at least give everyone at least the opportunity to have the first impressions as I got them, because I am pretty stoked, if I can use that word, about what this may contain, if it has any kind of ROMs, or if it's got hand-wired prototype board in it. It might be at least of some historical interest, and that's my goal here. See if I can pop this connection here. Okay, this may require actual tools involved. Okay, there's some more little notes scribbled on things that were probably tape or post-it note at some point in the deep and distant past. And there's at least one. Any idea what that would have been stuck in there for? Nope. Here we go. So again, his labeling, typewritten this time, for ground -5, +5, +12, and -12. Of course, that's floating around inside the case, so I have no idea what it was attached to. There's a few more like that deeper inside. So I'm going to tip this up, see how it's attached on the bottom. It's got this case such that almost should just come apart without any extra tools and screws and things, but it being nearly 40 years old, I don't want to force things too much until I've got no other choice. Time for the screwdrivers. So, as I've said, invite any of the people that are viewing, popping in and out from time to time, to ask a question, post a comment, what have you. And this is going out live, and I'm kind of babbling because I don't really have much in the way of an agenda, but should also be recorded. You are recording this, right, YouTube? Hope so. And you can take a look later on. Let's see. After the fact, what else I might have discovered. So I'm just taking the screws out of the corner of, oh, sorry, motion sickness. Taking the screws out of the corner of this CPU board, main logic board here, so that I should be able to slide it out of its drawer. And you can see it's held in right there. And over there. Let's see. Okay, so now it's off the. Okay, now hopefully there's no more trick to it than just pulling it out of these board edge connectors. Starting to wiggle a little bit. There we go. There's one side, and there's the other. There we go. So now we can see the whole board, or now you can see the whole board and all its white PCB silver traces with no solder mask at all involved in there. And the only thing that's socketed is this 6530. I would have thought the 6502 would be on a socket, but the 6530 seems to be doing. It seems to have some sort of special place there. I'm looking at the date codes on the chips. It looks like they're all 7732. There's 2077. That was the, oh, this is maybe a later edition. It's 2578. So that may be from the from a later on upgrade. That may be why it's on a socket. And also why it looks a little different from the other 6530. But yeah, it's all hand soldered. And on the reverse side, looks a little bit more like the circuit boards I'd be more familiar with. It's again that green color and actually has the solder mask on it. It's all through hole. And yeah, Bruce did a pretty clean job. There's some places where there's a little corrosion, but I'm pretty impressed. That's all that looks like. So, we got close up here of the label. You can sort of decipher that as you will. This is the KIM-1 MOS and Commodore, and looks like that's either a date stamp there, the 2677, and then there's a serial number there. And on this side here, you can see is a Rev, I don't know, does that say Rev D or Rev 0? I'm gonna guess Rev D. So here we go. This board that was just under the CPU board is a 1977 MTU K-1008. Get it to focus here. Yeah, 1977. It says visible, V-I-S-A-B-L-E memory. So it's an MTU memory board. And looking at it from this angle, you can see that it says it is a Rev A. Right here, so there's a Rev A under that capacitor there. And again, there's this composite connector. Is that what they mean by visible? It's a video output board as well as a memory board. I will have to Google. But I can see, obviously there's the big banks of memory here. Some jumpers, probably to set how much memory there was. And some handmade additions. Looks like maybe this heatsink was added later, because I don't know that they would have intentionally put it over top of that capacitor. So for power and heat regulation there. And there is a, I'll have to pull this out, take a closer look. But yes, obviously this was part of the MTU company's computer line, short-lived as it was, which is additional evidence that this whole machine may have been used for prototyping for MTU. And let's see here. I'm just making sure this isn't screwed in anywhere. It's just on the rail. Let me try and pop it out as well. Oh, I don't like the sounds of plastic crinkling after 40 years of inactivity. If anybody that's watching has a suggestion on how to get these boards out safely, I would appreciate it. I may have better luck with this second board underneath here, which also is from MTU. And let's see if this camera will focus. There we go. MTU 16K memory. And then there's a production number with a bunch of zeros and a 3 at the end. And again, more big banks of socketed memory chips. These have little green dots on them. These other ones had little red dots. Significance of which, again, if you know, tell me. So I'm going to try and get this bigger board out first. Gives me a little bit more room to grip without grabbing a socket. See, it's a little tight there. So there is the 16K memory board. And it looks like it's got some QA dots on it. Everything passed because it's got a green dot and a silver dot. So handwritten number 0457. And again, this is all no solder mask, white PCB. Can't tell. This might actually have been wave soldered based on the look of it. Yeah. So not hand assembled anymore, but wave soldered. I take that back. Yeah, it's all through hole and it's all hand assembled, looks like. Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't. That's some handmade bits there. And this says copyright 1978. And a little trim potentiometer here. Not sure what that's hooked up to. Seems to be going between. So where does that go? It's between that. Yeah, I'll get out the meter and trace some of these things later on. Maybe I can find where things are going, figure out what that is. Strange that there'd be a trim pot on a memory board, unless it's to adjust timing or something. Now, this capacitor looks like it's been scraped up a few times getting in and out of the case, but I haven't seen anything that looks like a blown capacitor. No chemical goo. Certainly no battery leakage because it doesn't have any battery. So yeah, this big bank of NEC RAM and 7400 logic. From 78. Yeah, some parts from 78, some from 77, just guessing by the codes on the chips. So there's MTU 16K to go with the built-in, was it 8K on the KIM-1, something like that. And now I have a little bit better handle on it. I will get this Visable memory, K1008, out of here. And this one also has a trim pot on it. But in addition to that, it has the composite output that the other one did not have. Okay, So there's the visible memory, which looks in layout fairly similar. Now that potentiometer has actually been covered over. So once the adjustment was made, they covered it so that you wouldn't adjust it again later. So yeah, there's a composite output. So yeah, more memory. And yeah, just a smaller footprint, but similar to the 16K memory here. So maybe this is 8K, this is 16K. But this one just has memory. This one actually has some additional functionality with this composite here. And this is MTU copyright with a big C, 1977. There's a big C there. It'll focus. Focus. There you go. So MTU copyright. And it is it says it has a Rev A under there. Let's see under that cap. If it'll focus, there you go. There's the back of it. Handy screw there for mounting this heatsink. So maybe that is a designed thing because it's in the same place as this other one. Now this makes me a little bit more excited even now because those look like ROMs. After all this time and they're uncovered, they've probably lost whatever they've got on them. But just to be on the safe side, I'm going to cover those up before they get any more light in them, because those windows are such that the contents of the chip can be rewritten with strong, I believe it's UV. So I'm going to get some tape and put it over top of those. And I was hoping to find some kind of ROMs, and it looks like there they are. So what is or was on them, there's no telling. Because again, they've been uncovered for so long, probably lost their mojo. And then here we've got lots of sockets for either other ROMs or other chips on this. That is definitely a prototyping board. And it is again, it's an MTU Corporation prototyping board. Copyright 1978. So once I get this out of the chassis, I'm going to hang things up because it's after 5 o'clock and I got better things to do. Well, really, I don't. But you all probably do. And I imagine that my son, who is at camp right now, would like to get picked up. So that's where I'm going to head once I get this out so you guys can see it. record it for posterity, and then we'll discuss further in the usual forums. And I may do follow-up videos on my YouTube channel. So there we go. Those ROMs, those I guess PROMs masked off now. But that explains hand wire wrapped board here. But those little mask windows explain the presence of a few more of these little bits of tape with hex addresses on them. So if anyone knows what KVOS stands for, I'm imagining that's what these ROMs used to contain. So F0, F400, F800, and there's probably one more around here with the next label on it. So again, MTU copyright board here, 1978. You can see that right well there. MTU 1978. And on this board it has 6532, a very large chip that has no marking on it, a bunch of sockets, and these TI programmable ROMs. So it's strange that this is an MTU part for this prototyping board. I would imagine it's just a it would be the kind of thing that you could get as a breadboard from other places, but it may be that they made this so that people could build their own expansion to the MTU. So you'd use, buy this project board, and it would hook up to their bus, and you'd have build your own tape interface or what have you. So, seeing as we have removed all of the boards from the chassis, all the rest seems to be mainly electrical connections, I'm going to call it a day and say thank you to the few people that popped in and out while I was doing this live, and anyone that's watching it later. I'm just going to actually adjust the camera. Anyhow, if you're watching this later, thanks, and please post your questions or comments, or if there's anything that you know about these parts and part numbers. I really appreciate it, because this is an ongoing mystery, and I'm having fun diving in, trying to solve answer a variety of questions. So please post your questions in the comments of this video. Share it if you have a favorite classic computers or vintage computing forum, and hopefully we'll figure out what exactly this is, and if the ROMs are salvageable. I'm hoping I can find somebody that can read them. And with that, good day.